the department. I'm trying to check. I see that the DM is here, the Deputy Minister. I've been trying to check whether the Minister is also in, and the DG. But greetings to everyone from the team from DMRE. It's a long time. I'm not sure is the AG also present. Maybe oh, I see the AG. Am I correct? Is in. Welcome to everyone. After a long
recording in progress.
Hectic schedule. Why Honorable Madoko is leaving so early in the meeting? When we are supposed to start. Today we have got a long day. I don't intend to take too much time myself, except to introduce two things. The first one is that honorable members will bear with us. We had initially submitted the program of the committee. Unfortunately, things changed and it was beyond our control. So we had to finalize the BRRR process or program within a period of 2 days. You will recall initially we had submitted a different plan, and then subsequently we received an instruction that no committee will meet outside its dedicated day or days. And the portfolio committee on mineral resources now has got 2 slots in a week. The first one is the normal one we had, which is Tuesday, and then we are given a bonus of Friday. That's what we have. So within the course of this week, by Friday, we must have finalized and adopted our BRRR report. Unfortunately, that's what Parliament demands in terms of the program. The second thing we had asked the AG, I'm not sure whether I should put this here or allow it to be dealt with when we deal with the with the department and its entities. Safe to say that in terms of the report, we received the correspondence from the Speaker's office, which was a request from the Minister for an extension for 3 entities. That is SEF Group, the NEXA, as well as the SADPMR, that there was a request for extension. I'm raising this thing because they will not be then on the program of today. Maybe Ari or Ayanda, can you flag when we deal before the AG, when we deal with the issue of those 3 entities, safe to say, if they have not tabled, they will then not be on the program of Parliament, and therefore that will be the reason that we cannot engage with them with that report here, because we work according to what is its 80 seat, which means is something that is in the public documents of Parliament for the sake goes beyond just us or the confines of Parliament, but also for public to know what will Parliament be dealing with. I just thought I must lay that background. For today, we will deal with other issues as we move forward. Are there any apologies?
Good morning and thank you, Chair. Just the following apologies. Mr. Zungula, who's unable to attend the meeting due to another meeting. And then we've also received apologies from Mr. Volmarans, who will be joining us later, say within a half an hour's time. And then Mr. Langa, who will be joining us. He's currently experiencing load shedding in his area, so he will be joining us, Chair. And then also an apology from the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, who's attending the Africa Energy Conference, which is starting today, Chair. Those are the apologies received, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. There's the DM is here. I can't see oh, I see now the DG. They are here. AG, are you present in the house?
We are present, Chairperson.
Okay. No, thank you very much. Before I give the AG, then I thought I must give that background. We are gonna break our sessions into two. They will deal with the AG, and then subsequent to that, we will then, after asking questions and making recommendations or whatever clarities that we will be dealing with, we will then take a break and then allow the engagement with the department. I will give the specifics when we deal with the department, but just in advance, the department must note that we really don't have time. That is plenty to us. We have to finish all the presentations, all the questions of clarity, and everything that would be done with all the entities that are scheduled for today. So before that, can I then give the AG to make the presentation? We all suffered the same thing of the network and electricity. I was running away from load shedding somewhere. Then I have to go to my constituency office. I hope if that there's a load shedding there, I will then have to rush somewhere else where there will be no load shedding. I'm the only person who is disadvantaged because I will have to be chairing the meetings in between. Okay, let me give you to the AG then to then brief the committee on their findings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson, and the members for inviting us to brief you on the audit outcomes of the department and its entities for the year ending 2020-2021. My name is Mudiehis Kosana. I am the Acting Deputy Business Unit Leader at the Office of Auditor-General. I am with Lufuno Mbadi, who is the Engagement Manager responsible for the department, and she will be taking us through the presentation, and she will also take the questions. So Chairperson, from my side, I would also like to be excused at 10 o'clock to attend another meeting. Thank you. Over to you, Lufuno.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, for this opportunity to come and present to you the audit outcomes of the DMR portfolio. Okay. All right. I will start with our mission and our vision. As a supreme audit institution, we exist through the Constitution, and then our reasons for existence is for us to strengthen our country's democracy by enabling oversight and accountability. And we do this through the auditing By doing that, we'll end up building public confidence. And then our vision is for us to be recognized as a relevant stakeholder, as a relevant supreme audit by our stakeholders. Okay. Then if I move over to the next slide, the AGSA mandate and also looking at the portfolio committee's mandate. So our mandate is coming from the Constitution, and then we also have the PAA, which is our Public Audit Act, that we use, that tells us that we must prepare the audit reports that will contain the audit opinions and conclusion in relation to the fair presentation of the annual financial statements and also compliance with applicable legislations. And we also report on predetermined objectives. And we can also perform discretionary audits that would have been decided upon in that specific time. And then we've also been given powers to take an appropriate remedial actions, and then where accounting officers or accounting authority has failed to comply with the remedial actions that we would have issued, or a certificate of debt that we might have issued them. And then the portfolio committee, the responsibility of the portfolio committee, among others, is to deal with the bills, matters failing within the portfolio, and then as referred to them by the Constitution. And then also to maintain the oversight on the portfolios of national executives, authorities, and then consult and liaise with the executive organs of state or the constitutional institutions. That's why we are here. And then also to monitor and investigate and also inquire and also make recommendation concerning any such executive organ of state or constitutional institutions in relation to the budget, rationalization, restructuring, and functionings of the organizations. We also consult and liaise with any other executive organ of state or the constitutional institutions. Okay. Then the role of the Auditor-General is to reflect on the audit work performed to assist the portfolio committee in its oversight role of assessing the performance of the entities, taking into consideration the committee's objective to produce the BRRR reports. Okay, and then what we understand about the role of the oversight is that we use information in our audit report. We use information in our audit report of any material irregularities for accounting and oversight purposes, insisting on timeliest implementation of recommendations. And then you use reports that have been tabled on progress with material irregularities to oversee and influence progress made by public bodies with investigations and executive authorities or recovery of debts there. You need to hold executive authorities accountable for failures of control environment, follow up on action plans against officials responsible for transgressions, and then obtain reports on investigations conducted into transgressions and irregularities affecting entities, and then follow up on previous commitments that have been made by the accounting officers, and then determine if ever corrective steps or actions that needed to address the shortcomings of internal controls have been implemented, and inquire what training and support is given to officials to enable them to correct whatever it is that might have gone wrong. Okay. Then when we come to the audit opinions, when we do our audits, we can have either one of these audit opinions that have been displayed here. For the portfolio of the DMRE, we have now conducted and completed 11 audits. And then from these audits, it's either they would have obtained what we call unqualified audit opinion with no findings, which is the clean audit, which is now the picture there that has got, that is green there, which means that in terms of the annual financial statements that were submitted for audit, there were any material misstatements that was identified when the audit was conducted. And also when we looked at the predetermined objectives, we did not identify any material misstatements that relates to the annual performance plans and annual performance reports. and also the key legislations that we have audited, there were no material non-compliance that were identified in relation to that. Then the other type of audit opinion that the entities can obtain is what we call financially unqualified audit opinion with findings, which is the yellow, where we are saying that in terms of the annual financial statements, the annual financial statements were free from material misstatements. However, there were issues either in relation to the predetermined objectives, where there were material findings that would have been identified, or there would have been material non-compliance with the applicable legislations. And then the other audit opinion that we can give is what we call qualified opinion, which I am glad to say that for the portfolio of the DMRE, there is no qualified audit opinion, where it means that there were challenges in terms of the annual financial statements. There were items or line items in the annual financial statements that were not free from material misstatements, and also the entities might have had some non-compliance with laws and regulations or findings in terms of the predetermined objectives. The other type of opinion is what we call an adverse opinion. Also glad to say that in relation to the DMRE portfolio, we don't have any adverse opinion, where we are talking to, there were challenges in the annual financial statements, meaning that almost each and every line item of the submitted annual financial statements, we had material misstatements in those annual financial statements. And then also the issues that relates to predetermined objectives might be present, and also non-compliance with laws and regulations. And the final audit opinion that we may give is what we call disclaimed audit opinion, where we do have one entity within the portfolio that has obtained a disclaimer of audit opinion. What it means here is that there were challenges that are similar to the qualified audit opinion, meaning that the line items had material misstatements. However, there were also instances where there were no evidence that could have been provided by those entities in order to support the numbers that have been disclosed in those annual financial statements. And then also the non-compliance with laws and regulations or the predetermined objectives, material findings, they could be identified. So throughout the document, I will be using the yellow, green, and red, and also the arrows that are there on your right-hand side bottom that talks about improvements, unchanged, or regression. So I will be using a lot of those ones throughout the presentation. Okay. So for the mineral resources and energy portfolio, so we are sitting with the Central Energy Fund as group, as one of the entities within the portfolio, and NERSA, NNR, Nexa Group, NERWADI, SANEDI, CGS, MHSC, SADPMR, SDT, and Mintex. So those are the entities within the mineral resources of energy portfolio that we'll be talking to. Okay. So the overall message for the portfolio is that for the financial year ended 31 March 2021, there was one entity that received what we call clean audit, which was NERWADI, and that represents the 8% of the portfolio. And then the majority of the entities within the portfolio had received what we called unqualified with findings, which was represented by the 75% of the portfolio. And those entities are CGS, DMR, MHSC, Mintech, NERSA, NNR, SADPMR, SANEDI, and SDT. And then we had one entity that received audit opinion that is disclaimed, that is Nexa Group. And then we are saying that the instances of non-compliance in the areas of expenditure management, supply chain management, consequence management, and material misstatements were identified in the annual financial statements and submitted for audit purposes. So those were the main reason as to why these entities did not obtain the clean audit outcome. So in most instances, the findings that were raised did reoccur as compared to the prior, indicating that action plans and the culture of accountability are not necessarily exercised effectively. So the governance structures within these entities and the leadership need to ensure that action are taken to address all these internal control deficiencies in order for them to move to clean audit outcomes. So within the portfolio, SEF group is still not finalized as to date when we are presenting to the committee, and then due to the fact that what we call consolidated annual financial statements for the Petro SA was only submitted 30 September, and then with that, Petro SA group needs to be finalized before we can finalize the SEF group's audit itself. Okay. So on the next slide, we have got the snapshot of what I was talking about in the previous slide, where I am showing comparison between the prior and the current year. As you can see that there was a regression as compared to the prior, where last year we had 2 clean audits for the portfolio, and then this year we only have 1 clean audit. And then in terms of the unqualified with findings, that has remained unchanged as compared to the prior. And then in terms of the disclaimer of opinion, that also the same entity that was disclaimed in the prior, it's still disclaimed in the current year. And then there's 1 audit that is outstanding, that is now the SEF group. Okay. If I move over to the quality of financial performance reporting, which is the predetermined objectives. The quality of financial reporting and also the performance reporting. So I will start with the credible financial reporting. So on the credible financial reporting, what we are saying is that if we look at the portfolio, in relation to the submission of the annual financial statements, 91%, which are the 10 entities within the portfolio, managed to submit their annual financial statements within the legislated deadline. And that was an improvement as compared to the prior. And then the financial statements that were submitted and audited, there were 3 entities that had submitted annual financial statements that did not contain any material errors in them. However, throughout the audit process, we ended up with the entities that now their financial statements reporting is of quality, meaning that there are no material misstatements on those annual financial statements after the audit process. 10 of those entities remained with the quality of annual financial statements that are not misstated. So in terms of those numbers, the ones that submitted the annual financial statements that did not have any errors, that was Nirwadi, SDT, and Sanedi. And then the entities that were assisted with the audit process when it comes to the annual financial statements that were submitted was the DMR, NERSA, MHSC, MINTEC, NNR, SADPMR, and CGS. And one entity that even through the audit process was unable to clear the material misstatements on the annual financial statements was NEXA. So the findings that were raised were recurring. So there needs to have preventative controls and measures in place to prevent some of those findings to recur in the future. Okay, so when we move over to the predetermined objectives, the performance reports. So the performance reports that were submitted without errors, only 3 entities, which was CGS, MINTEC, and Nirwadi, was able to submit annual financial statements that did not contain any material errors in them. And then the performance reports that were adjusted through the audit process to improve the reliability of those annual financial statements were 8. So the ones that had material findings was DMR, NERSA, NNR, MHSC, and Sanedi. Those ones were able to correct those misstatements. However, NEXA, SADPMR, and STD, they were not able to correct those misstatements that were identified. So the recommendations that we have for the entities is that the entities need to design their performance indicators that are well defined and they adhere to the SMART principles criteria. And then also they need to have standard operating procedures or policies that will assist them in making sure that they design the processes to record information and to store all the supporting evidence for measuring whether the planned indicators are clearly defined. Also, the supporting evidence needs to be readily available. So whenever to support what has been reported in their annual performance reports. So if I move over to compliance with legislations. Okay, so in terms of the compliance with legislations, we have focus areas that we have audited. And then in terms of the focus areas that related to the material misstatements that were identified in the annual financial statements, you can see that DMR, NERSA, SADPMR, MHSC, MINTEC, and CGS and NEXA had that material non-compliance due to the financial statements that were submitted for audit that were not free from material misstatements. And then we also have the supply chain management non-compliance, where the procurement process was not fair or